Anna had been traveling for hours through dusty, winding roads that seemed forgotten by the maps she carried. Her small car bounced over potholes and dry earth as the sun began to dip behind the hills. She had been following a tip from a whistleblower, a person whose identity she did not know but whose message had carried urgency and fear. The message was simple. Something terrible is happening here, and no one wants the world to know. Anna, a human rights investigator, had seen enough cruelty in her life to take such warnings seriously. Still, as she approached the outskirts of the village, an uneasy feeling settled in her chest. The village itself seemed ordinary at first glance. Small houses lined narrow streets, children played near dusty corners, and women swept their doorsteps in a rhythm that made the scene seem calm. But Anna knew that appearances could be deceiving. She parked her car behind a small bakery and observed quietly. Her eyes were drawn to the compound on the hill, fenced with high, reinforced walls topped with barbed wire. Armed guards patrolled. The perimeter and the few workers she could see moved quickly, heads down as if trying to avoid being noticed. Anna's heart pounded. She had prepared for dangerous situations before, but this felt different. Something about the scale and the secrecy of the operation chilled her. Taking a deep breath, she pulled out her camera and notebook. She needed evidence, not assumptions. Slowly, she began walking toward the outskirts of the compound, trying to remain unnoticed. Every step brought a clearer picture of the horrors that were hidden inside. From a small gap in the fence, Anna caught her first glimpse of the people inside. Her stomach turned. Men and women were moving in lines, carrying heavy loads, their faces pale and weary. Children, some no older than 8, were sweeping floors or stacking crates. She noticed their eyes, the way they darted nervously around, as if they had learned long ago that looking someone in the eye could be dangerous. Some of the workers bore marks, bruises, cuts, and scars that told silent stories of abuse and fear. Anna crouched behind a bush and began taking photographs, careful to remain unseen. She jotted down notes about the guards, the number of people visible, and the movements within the compound. She could see that the work was grueling, unrelenting, and entirely forced. A young girl no older than 10 struggled to carry a basket that was clearly too heavy for her small frame. When she stumbled, a guard shouted angrily and pushed her forward. Anna's hand shook as she documented every detail. These images and notes would be critical. They would tell the world the truth that the perpetrators wanted to hide. As Anna moved closer, she overheard fragments of whispered conversations. "Please, no more," one worker muttered under his breath, his voice trembling. Another spoke softly to a small group of children, offering reassurance in words barely audible. These whispers, these small acts of kindness and courage, touched Anna deeply. She realized that despite the cruelty and suffering, humanity still existed in small, fragile forms. But the reality of the situation weighed heavily. Anna knew this was not a simple case of poor working conditions or minor exploitation. This was organized, deliberate, and ongoing. Thousands of people were trapped here, hidden from the eyes of the law and from the world. She felt a surge of anger, not just at the captors but at the systems and individuals who had allowed such horrors to continue unnoticed for so long. How many people had walked past these fences and never questioned what lay inside? How many had turned a blind eye? Anna spent the next several hours documenting everything she could. She used binoculars to count the number of workers and guards. She took photographs of the entrances, the paths leading to hidden buildings, and any vehicles that came and went. She spoke briefly with a few locals, careful not to reveal her purpose too clearly. They offered small hints, rumors of people disappearing, whispers of someone being punished for speaking out, and strange deliveries that arrived at night. The fear in their voices was palpable, but so was their hope that someone from the outside would finally notice. As dusk fell, Anna retreated to a safe distance. She knew she could not gather all the information in one day, but what she had seen was enough to shock anyone who would look at it. She took one last look at the compound, feeling both fear and determination. These people needed help, and she was committed to making sure the world saw the truth. Returning to her car, Anna called her colleague to report what she had found. She spoke in hushed tones, outlining the scale of the operation, the conditions, and the potential risks for anyone attempting a rescue. Her voice was steady, but her mind raced with questions. Who else knew about this? How long had it been going on? And most importantly, how could thousands of lives be saved before more damage was done? That night, as Anna reviewed her notes and photographs in a small, dimly lit room, she felt a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. She had uncovered something monstrous, something that could shake governments and societies if exposed. Yet she also understood the danger. The perpetrators were powerful, likely with connections beyond the village, and they would not surrender their control easily. Every decision from this point forward would carry immense risk, not just for Anna, but for the people trapped in the compound. As she drifted into a restless sleep, images of the exhausted workers and frightened children haunted her mind. She knew that what lay ahead would be difficult, dangerous, and perhaps even deadly. But Anna also knew that turning away was not an option. Humanity had to act, and she had to be part of that action. By the morning, the world had yet to know what Anna had discovered, but within her heart the truth was already burning bright. She had seen the faces, the suffering, and the courage of those who had been hidden away. And she knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would test every ounce of her courage, her intelligence, and her humanity. The story of the enslaved, the silenced, and the forgotten was about to be told, and the world would never be the same. The morning air was heavy with tension as Anna returned to the village. The sun rose slowly over the dusty hills, casting long shadows across the compound's walls. The events of the previous day weighed heavily on her mind. She could not shake the images of the exhausted workers, the children carrying heavy loads, or the bruises and scars that told silent stories of pain. Today, she would go deeper. Today she would try to understand not only the scale of the operation, but also the human stories hidden inside. Anna moved carefully, keeping to the shadows and using the natural cover of trees and hills to stay unnoticed. She had memorized the guard routines and noticed small openings in their patrol patterns. Her goal was to speak to someone inside, or at least hear more about life within the compound. Every step felt like stepping into a story she had only imagined in her worst nightmares. As she observed, she began to notice details that had been easy to miss the day before. Workers were forced to march in precise lines, and any hesitation or mistake was met with sharp words, sometimes accompanied by harsh physical punishment. Some of the children tried to help one another, sharing small morsels of food or quietly comforting each other, but their efforts were small against the harshness surrounding them. Anna felt a mix of anger and sorrow. These were not just laborers, they were people, full of dreams, hopes, and fears, now trapped in a life no human should endure. She focused on one small group near a storage shed. A young boy, no more than 10, was struggling to carry a large sack of grain. His small hands trembled and his legs wobbled under the weight. A guard shouted at him to move faster, raising a stick in the air. The boy fell to the ground, tears streaming down his face, and tried to get up, but the guard struck him again. Anna's stomach twisted. She quickly took a photo from a distance, her hands shaking, then scribbled notes about what she had seen. She realized she needed more than photographs. She needed the stories, the voices, the evidence of the suffering that had been hidden for so long. Anna spent the next hours carefully making contact with a few of the villagers who had friends or family working inside the compound. Speaking in whispers, they shared fragments of what life inside was like. One woman spoke of her cousin, who had been forced to work for nearly 10 years without a single day off. She described the hunger, the fear of punishment, and the hopelessness that had settled over those trapped inside. Another villager told Anna about the children who were separated from their families, some so young they barely remembered what it felt like to live freely. As Anna listened, she realized the horror was far deeper than she had imagined. This was not simply about forced labor. It was a complete stripping away of human dignity. People were kept in a system where their lives were controlled, their voices silenced, and their very identities stolen. They were not allowed to speak freely, to rest, to eat properly, or even to dream of a future. Every moment of their existence was dominated by fear. Anna also began to notice small acts of courage. A woman had secretly sewn small pouches with hidden scraps of food to share with weaker workers. A young man had found a way to communicate with his family outside, sending tiny messages of hope hidden in deliveries. Even the children, despite their fear, tried to care for one another. These acts, though small, showed a spark of humanity that the captors could not fully extinguish. By midday, Anna had gathered enough information to understand the scope. There were thousands of people inside the compound, men, women, and children, of every age. They were forced into different areas depending on their age and strength, performing backbreaking labor from dawn to dusk. The guards, well-trained and ruthless, enforced strict rules with the threat of violence. Food and water were scarce, and medical care was non-existent. The people were treated like objects, commodities, not human beings. Anna's heart ached, but she knew she could not let despair stop her. She photographed the arrangements, the living quarters, and the paths leading to hidden areas where the guards stored weapons and supplies. She made detailed notes, every line of which would later become vital evidence. As she worked, she thought of the countless people who had suffered silently, their cries unheard, their existence ignored by the wider world. In the late afternoon, Anna moved closer to one of the workers who had just managed a small break. The man noticed her presence but seemed too exhausted and fearful to react immediately. Anna, speaking softly, tried to offer reassurance. She explained that she wanted to help, that she was documenting the truth for the world to see. Slowly, the man began to trust her. He spoke in broken words about the long hours, the constant threats, and the occasional desperate attempts to resist. He told her about a small group of workers who had secretly shared information and planned ways to survive, little acts of rebellion that kept their hope alive. Anna listened, absorbing every detail. She felt both sorrow and admiration. These people had endured unimaginable suffering, yet they still clung to hope and courage. She promised to carry their stories beyond the walls of the compound, to make sure the world could not ignore them. As the sun began to set, Anna retreated once more, her notebook and camera filled with evidence. The journey back to her small lodging was quiet, her mind heavy with the knowledge of the suffering she had witnessed. She knew that what she had seen was only a fraction of the truth. Inside the compound, thousands of lives were at stake, and every hour without intervention was another hour of pain. That night, Anna reviewed her notes and photographs under dim light. She saw the bruised arms, the tired eyes, the small hands, of children clinging to tiny scraps of food. Each image told a story of struggle, endurance, and survival. She realized that exposing the truth was not enough. Something had to be done to protect these people, to free them from the nightmare they were trapped in. Anna felt a mix of exhaustion and determination. She could not allow fear to control her, nor could she let the suffering go unnoticed. The world needed to see what was happening, and the survivors needed someone to speak for them. She made a plan to reach out to authorities, journalists, and human rights organizations, but she knew that action would be dangerous. The captors were powerful, and their networks extended beyond the village. Any misstep could put lives at even greater risk. Despite the risks, Anna's resolve strengthened. She had seen the horror, but she had also seen courage, kindness, and hope. The workers, the children, and the brave villagers had survived under unimaginable conditions. Now, it was up to Anna and the wider world to ensure that their suffering would not be in vain. Tomorrow she would return with new plans, new contacts, and a renewed determination. As she drifted into a restless sleep, Anna could still hear the whispered voices of those trapped inside. She knew that the discovery was only the beginning, and that the real challenge, rescue, justice, and the fight against those responsible, was yet to come. Humanity had been forced to confront a hidden cruelty, and the path ahead would demand courage, intelligence, and unwavering commitment. Anna closed her eyes, ready to continue the fight, knowing that the story of the enslaved was about to reach the world. and nothing would ever be the same again. News of the compound spread quickly once Anna shared her evidence with human rights organizations and journalists. The photographs and detailed notes were undeniable. They showed thousands of men, women, and children living under brutal conditions, forced to work from dawn until dusk with little food, water, or care. The world reacted with shock and outrage. Headlines appeared across newspapers and television screens. Thousands of slaves discovered in hidden compound, modern-day captivity exposed, and humanity ignored for years. The story shook governments, societies, and ordinary people alike. While the public was outraged, the response on the ground had to be carefully planned. Anna, working with international agencies, helped organize teams to provide immediate relief. The rescuers included medical personnel, counselors, security experts, and volunteers. Every move had to be strategic. The captors were well-armed, organized, and dangerous. A single mistake could endanger the lives of the people they were trying to save. When the first teams arrived at the village, they were met with a tense mix of fear and relief. The locals had kept quiet for years, knowing that speaking out could mean disappearance or death. Now, seeing outsiders who genuinely wanted to help, they felt a cautious hope. Anna guided the rescuers, showing them safe routes and entrances she had observed. Her notes became a critical roadmap, allowing the teams to navigate the compound efficiently. Inside the compound, the workers were confused at first. After years of strict control, no one had come to help. The appearance of outsiders in uniforms and carrying supplies caused a mixture of fear and disbelief. Some ran, fearing traps, while others stayed still, unsure of what to do. Anna and the teams moved slowly, carefully announcing their presence, explaining that they were there to help and that no harm would come to anyone who cooperated. As the workers were freed, their exhaustion and suffering became painfully visible. Many had not eaten properly in weeks. Some were sick or injured from years of harsh treatment. Children clung to each other, or to older siblings, afraid to move too far. Medical personnel immediately attended to those in the worst condition, giving food, water, and first aid. Psychologists and counselors began speaking gently, offering comfort and reassurance. Anna watched, feeling a mixture of relief and heartbreak. The survivors had endured unimaginable suffering, but now they could begin to breathe again. The rescued workers shared their stories. One woman spoke of being forced to work for over a decade, never seeing her children for years. Another man described the daily punishments for minor mistakes, the constant fear that kept him awake at night, and the small, quiet acts of resistance that had kept him alive. The children spoke in whispers, remembering only bits and pieces of a life outside the compound, yet showing remarkable courage. Every story added weight to the evidence Anna had already gathered, and reminded everyone why this mission was so vital. Governments and international organizations quickly became involved. Investigations began to uncover the broader network behind the compound. Corrupt officials, greedy business people, and traffickers were identified. The revelations were shocking. The operation had been protected by secrecy, bribery, and intimidation for years. Authorities realized that the problem was larger than a single compound. It was part of a global system that had allowed human suffering to continue unnoticed. At the same time, ordinary people began to respond. Communities offered shelter, food, and clothing to the survivors. Volunteers helped rebuild lives, creating safe spaces where those freed could rest, heal, and regain their confidence. Schools opened their doors to the children, and workshops taught skills to adults who had been deprived of education for years. The world had finally recognized the human cost of indifference, and for the first time in a long while, hope began to grow among the survivors. But not everyone was patient or satisfied with waiting for legal action. Many survivors, fueled by years of fear and anger, wanted immediate accountability. They had endured cruel treatment, lost loved ones, and suffered unimaginable hardship. Their pain was real, and their desire for justice was urgent. This created tension. The rescuers and authorities wanted to handle the situation carefully to avoid further bloodshed, while the survivors wanted to confront those responsible directly. Anna understood both perspectives. She knew that balancing safety with justice would be one of the most difficult challenges of her life. During this time, Secret networks of activists who had helped in small ways for years began to reveal themselves. Some had been smuggling information, food, or medical supplies into the compound. Others had been helping families of the workers, providing quiet support and hope. Now, with the world watching, these networks could operate openly, offering critical insight into how the system had been maintained and how similar operations could be prevented in the future. Anna also realized the importance of recording every detail. Photographs, testimonies, and reports became part of a comprehensive record that would support future prosecutions. She conducted interviews, verified evidence, and prepared statements for the media. Her goal was clear. The story had to reach the world in full, leaving no room for denial or excuses. Every survivor's voice mattered, and Anna made sure they were heard. As weeks passed, the rescued individuals began to regain a sense of autonomy. Children played in open fields without fear, women prepared meals together, and men shared stories of survival and resilience. Slowly, laughter returned, even if fragile at first. Communities that had once been silent became active in advocacy, helping to expose the broader networks that had allowed such cruelty to continue. The process was not easy, and moments of fear and trauma remained, but progress was undeniable. Anna reflected on the human response she had witnessed. The combination of courage, compassion, and organized effort had begun to change lives. Humanity had the ability not only to uncover hidden horrors, but also to respond with empathy and decisive action. Yet she knew that this was only the beginning. The road to full justice would be long, and ensuring the safety and well-being of survivors would require ongoing attention, care, and vigilance. The story of the compound became a symbol, a reminder of both human cruelty and human resilience. People across the globe were inspired to act, whether by donating to relief efforts, volunteering time, or advocating for stronger laws to prevent such atrocities. Anna's initial discovery had sparked a movement, showing that even in the darkest situations, awareness, courage, and coordinated action could save lives. By the end of Part 3, the immediate danger had been addressed, and thousands of lives were being restored. But the story of the enslaved did not end here. The world had responded, yes, but the survivors' experiences, the power of those who had caused harm, and the desire for justice all pointed to the challenges yet to come. Anna knew that the journey was far from over, and the next chapters would require even greater courage, resilience, and determination from everyone involved. The survivors had been freed, but the scars of years in captivity ran deep. Fear still lingered in their eyes, and anger simmered beneath their calm expressions. They remembered everything: the harsh punishments, the stolen years, the hopelessness that had defined their lives inside the compound. For many, the desire for justice burned hotter than anything else. They wanted accountability for the people who had caused them so much suffering. Anna understood this drive. She had seen it in their faces and heard it in their voices. Slowly, the survivors began to organize themselves. They were cautious, knowing that their former captors still held power and influence outside the compound. Yet they were determined not to be silent anymore. Small groups discussed strategies, focusing on ways to confront those responsible while minimizing risk to themselves and their families. They drew on what they had learned during their time in captivity: observation, planning, and careful timing. Anna watched their transformation with a mixture of awe and concern. She knew the survivors had every right to feel anger, but she also knew that the situation could easily turn dangerous. Still, she could not stop them from seeking justice. Instead, she helped them plan carefully, advising them to act strategically, document every step, and avoid unnecessary confrontation. The confrontation came in stages. First, they exposed the lower-level operatives, the guards and managers who had enforced the cruel conditions. Using photographs, testimonies, and secret records, the survivors made clear to authorities and the public exactly what these individuals had done. Many of the perpetrators were arrested, but some tried to flee or deny their involvement. The survivors' detailed evidence left no room for excuses. Next, they focused on the higher-level organizers, the people who had financed the compound, bribed officials, and kept the system running. These individuals had long avoided scrutiny, but now the evidence was overwhelming. The survivors worked with legal teams and authorities to ensure that arrests were carried out safely. They did not act recklessly. Their revenge was not about violence, but about exposing truth and ensuring accountability. Throughout this process, Anna documented everything. She recorded interviews, collected documents, and photographed evidence. She knew that the world needed to understand not just the horrors of captivity, but also the courage and determination of those who had survived. The story of the confrontation became a testament to human resilience, the power of people who refused to be broken, who had endured cruelty, but refused to let it define them. The survivors' actions sent a strong message. The captors realized that they could no longer operate in secrecy, that their power had limits, and that the people they had tried to control were capable of standing up. Justice was not only being enforced through courts and law enforcement, it was being carried out by the very people who had suffered in a way that demanded recognition, respect, and accountability. As the weeks went by, the compound was dismantled. Buildings that had once imprisoned thousands were repurposed for education, healthcare, and community development. The land became a symbol of recovery and hope. Survivors began rebuilding their lives, forming new communities and supporting one another. They held meetings to discuss how to prevent similar atrocities in the future and how to help others who might still be in danger. Anna reflected on the events with a mixture of pride and humility. She had been part of a mission that saved lives, but the true heroes were the survivors themselves. They had endured years of suffering, faced unimaginable challenges, and emerged determined not only to survive, but to reclaim their dignity. Their courage and resilience had changed the course of their own lives and the lives of countless others who would be inspired by their story. By the end of this phase, the story of the enslaved had transformed from one of despair into one of empowerment. Justice had been served, not through reckless violence but through courage, strategy, and unity. The survivors had taken control of their narrative, proving that even in the darkest circumstances, humanity could find strength, hope, and determination to fight back against cruelty. After the confrontations and legal actions, the survivors faced the long task of rebuilding their lives. The world had seen the horrors, but the journey toward healing was just beginning. For many, the trauma ran deep, and every day presented challenges. Memories of fear and abuse lingered, and trust had to be rebuilt slowly. Yet the survivors were determined to move forward, refusing to be defined solely by their past suffering. Communities formed to support them. Safe houses, counseling centers, and educational programs were established. Children who had been denied a normal childhood now had schools to attend, where they could learn, play, and grow. Adults participated in workshops that taught skills they had missed while captive: reading, writing, crafts, and trades. Slowly, the survivors began to regain a sense of autonomy, dignity, and hope. Anna continued to work closely with them, helping to document progress and ensure that the survivors' voices were heard. She wrote reports, shared stories, and highlighted the importance of continued support from governments and organizations worldwide. Her efforts helped secure funding for programs, ensuring that the survivors had access to food, healthcare, education, and job training. The survivors themselves became advocates. Many shared their stories publicly, speaking at conferences, schools, and community events. Their courage inspired others to act against human trafficking and modern slavery. They became living proof that even in the face of great suffering, people could reclaim their lives, fight for justice, and create change. Life gradually returned to a new normal. The survivors learned to celebrate small victories, first steps toward independence, new friendships, and moments of joy that had once seemed impossible. They created support networks, helping one another cope with the lingering effects of trauma. Laughter began to return, fragile at first but growing stronger with each passing day. The story of the compound and its survivors also led to broader changes. Governments implemented stricter anti-trafficking laws, companies were held accountable for labor practices, and international cooperation improved to prevent similar atrocities. Public awareness increased dramatically, with media campaigns, education programs, and social initiatives emphasizing the importance of vigilance and empathy. The world had seen the cost of ignoring human suffering and vowed not to let it happen. Again, Anna reflected on the journey from discovery to healing. She remembered the fear and shock she had felt when she first saw the compound. She remembered the courage of the survivors, their determination to reclaim their lives, and their unwavering hope. She realized that while the story had begun with horror, it had grown into a testament to human strength, solidarity, and resilience. The survivors themselves never forgot what had happened, but they chose not to let their experiences define them entirely. They honored their past by working to create a better future for themselves, their children, and others who might be in danger. Communities became stronger, more compassionate, and more vigilant. The once hidden compound became a symbol of transformation, a reminder that even in the darkest places, hope and humanity could prevail. In the end, the story of the enslaved was not only about suffering, but about the power of people to rise above it. It was about courage, resilience, and the determination to fight for justice. Anna's work had been crucial, but the real heroes were the survivors, who took their pain and turned it into strength, making the world safer and more aware. Though the journey was far from over and challenges remained, the survivors had reclaimed their lives. They had transformed despair into hope, fear into courage, and silence into voices that could no longer be ignored. Humanity had faced a dark reality, but it had responded with compassion, determination, and unity. The story ended not with defeat, but with triumph, a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable cruelty, people could survive, heal, and inspire the world.